What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the basement. You got me and my boy Rocco here, and we're going to review the Joker movie for you.
Good to be back.
What's up, brother?
How you doing, bro?
Now, if you haven't seen Joker yet, this is going to be a spoiler review, so you may want to stop and wait till you go see the movie. And it's definitely worth going to see. I think you should see it in the movies. I enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to. But that said, I thought it was okay.
It's funny how, like, you know how, like, Scorsese recently said that Marvel movies
are not cinema.
You know, it's like, this is one of those movies where, whether you agree with him or not, which I don't, I really don't agree with him. Movie's a movie, and if it's in a movie theater, it's cinema.
As far as I'm concerned, if you enjoyed your time watching other people move around on the square box, it's cinema.
Exactly.
Like, don't be so... That's kind of a really hoity-toity thing to say.
I think there's some validity to what he's saying. I think he's just trying to say, I think he's a little butthurt that his types of movies aren't getting wider releases in today's
He's got a club
market.
of his own. I mean, there's James Cameron, there's Steven Spielberg.
Absolutely. But this is one of those movies, much like The Dark Knight was 9 years ago, where it's just like, okay, you could argue that superhero movies and comic book movies can be like tour de forces on the cinema on the silver screen. So this is just like, and I can go into it and I can nitpick the Joker, but this is first and foremost a character study. It's a drama, and it just so happens that the source material is based off of comic books. So we're a comic book character. Having said that, are we getting into it?
Yeah, this is why I wanted you to come on, because, dude, you're an actor, and I said, if there's anybody that I need to review this movie with, it's you.
Oh man, it's just, this is, as from an actor's perspective, I'll get this out of the way.
Yeah.
It just makes you, it puts the pressure on any actor to want to up their game and sort of keep training, keep learning. Joaquin Phoenix is going to get an Oscar nomination.
He'll definitely get the nomination. I don't think he'll win.
You know, and I feel like, because they already gave it to Heath Ledger, and that was a posthumous thing. And I always said, and I hate to take this away from Heath Ledger, because he really... I miss the guy like crazy. He was really getting to a place where, like, legendary status as an actor, like A-list. And, you know, would he have won, though, if he didn't die? That's a totally different story.
Right.
So it's like, you know, posthumous Lifetime Achievement Awards. Did he deserve it? Did he earn it? By far. Having said that, you know, we are entering an age where it's more about politics than it is about actual performance. You know, what's your campaign like to push for the Oscars? I heard that there were 23 movies submitted. No, was it 23 or 33? I think it might have been 33 movies this year submitted for Best Film category for the Oscars. Remember when it was just like...
10.
No, before that. It was like only 4 or 5. And now it's 10. You could have up to 10 nominees for a single category. Fucking ridiculous, man.
And they wonder why these award shows are 6 hours long.
So it's just like, you know, could this be a contender for best film? Maybe, but you got to look at all the films worthy enough for that category. Awards today, I think, are just pointless too. You know,
it's just everybody patting themselves on the back.
It's box office draw. There's a lot of other factors and elements. It's also based on expectation. You throw the words around like comic book movie, comic book adaptation. Todd Phillips, you know, people who aren't well read or you know, reading up on the current movie news aren't going to know what to expect from a film like this. Right. Parents were taking their kids because they wanted to see a Batman movie. Are you fucking nuts?
Does nobody pay attention, though?
Yeah. Well, that's why I love Alamo Drafthouse. They had like that parental advisory warning. It's just like, this is not a kid's movie. Keep your fucking kids at home.
Seriously.
There is controversial elements and extreme violence and just parts of this movie that are going to make you feel uneasy. And look, I got a strong stomach for anything cinema. All right? I've sat through Cannibal Holocaust.
It's a great movie.
With ease. Okay? And that's banned in several countries, or still to this day around the world.
Going back to Todd Phillips, like the guy's the director of The Hangover. You mentioned Old School as well.
He did Old School.
I forgot about that one. This is way out of his wheelhouse.
Well, you know, I think
At least it
after
seems.
yes, but after I mean, filmmakers. The point of a filmmaker in a professional career is to evolve and to mature in your content and stuff like that.
But now this was Phillips's first foray into this
Into
kind of
drama, I believe so.
and
I
such a
wanna
dark
say.
drama to boot. Like,
But you got like if you think about those Hangover movies, there are moments in those Hangover movies where you're going, this is dramatic. Like he had that niche. I think he had that eye, or he was honing in on it and discovering that, oh, I can pull the camera into my actors' faces, and even though it's Zach Galifianakis' face, it's more intense than just doing a mid shot. So, this movie, if you watch The Joker, he puts a magnifying glass on Joaquin Phoenix's character.
yeah, there's a lot of close-ups.
Oh my god! So cinematically and visually.
I mean, the whole movie starts with the close-up where he's in the mirror and he's like,
he's just so.
there's something to be said for a clown forcing himself to smile. I think that like kind of sets the tone for the whole movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't matter what movie you're talking about, what the story is. If you open your movie with a close-up, an extreme close-up on your main character's face, you need to accept the fact that what you're going to watch here is a character study. And it's like cinema 101 almost, in telling a story. And you want that. You want a magnifying glass on this character, Arthur Fleck. Now, having said that, I should say before I go any further on how I feel about this movie that before this movie came out, or when it was first announced that there was going to be a Joker movie, and it was, I think the word being thrown around was origin story.
Uh-huh.
Okay. By principle, and as a comic book fan,
You don't do a
I
Joker
am
origin movie.
totally against the idea and the concept of an origin story on what is essentially and arguably the greatest villain of all time. The reason
You'll get no argument from me
yeah,
here.
the reason why the Joker is arguably the best, the most infamous one of all time is because of his anonymity. You didn't know exactly who this guy was. And Heath Ledger's Joker in Dark Knight kind of touched on that and explored that a lot with every time he would bring, how I got these scars.
He had a new story.
He's just like, I'm just fucking with people.
But now, playing off of that point, like you, when the movie was first announced, I'm like, this is going to be stupid. They can't do an a Joker origin movie. But when you see the movie,
Is it?
and is it? Could it be? Is even a better question. Because there are aspects of it that, is it a definitive story? Is it just him, giving you one of those multiple choice scenarios? And if you look at it like that, I think you can come off of this movie enjoying it, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, this sucks," and it doesn't. It's not a sucky movie. It doesn't suck by any stretch of the imagination.
This movie's well shot.
It didn't blow my mind, but it was good.
I'll establish and recognize before Joaquin Phoenix's performance, which is the highlight of the movie, obviously for a lot of people. The thing that I noticed the most was the cinematography and the way it was lit.
Yeah, see, these are all things that
There's
going to go right over my head.
There's also a major character depicted in this movie that Todd Phillips captured perfectly that I don't think a lot of people are giving him credit for, and I'll get into that in just a second.
Okay.
So, but yeah, cinematically and just lighting and the soundtrack and just everything about it, while it was heavily influenced by a lot of Scorsese movies, Taxi Driver, King of Comedy, and it's got a lot of elements in there that sort of aren't necessarily the most original thing. We've seen this in other movies before, a lot of these themes. It's still just like, it's captivating. It just sucks you in. So what I was going to say was, other than Arthur Fleck being the main focus of this story, I think the second most important character to take away from this as a Joker movie within a DC universe kind of realm, call it whatever you want, is the character of Gotham City.
Okay.
Gotham City, I think Todd Phillips perfectly captured here, because when we discuss what is real in this movie, or like whatever you think your theory is, the one thing that can't be denied here, and I think that is universal and I think has been captured the best up till this point in all the Batman movies, is the Gotham City that justifies the validation for an eventual existence of a guy like Batman. You know, this is a city that is at its boiling point.
It was New York City in the 80s, man.
Exactly.
It was the early 80s, no less.
So
Coming off of the real dark times in the 70s.
God. So, but it's just like, you're going to live in this city? Oh my God, yeah, we need a vigilante to clean up the streets here.
Yeah.
You know, everything from crooked cops to just people. Like, you know, there's this great scene where he's on the bus, Arthur Fleck, and he's trying to make a kid laugh, and the fucking mom just turns to him. He's like,
Leave my kid alone.
It's like, Jesus, just trying to make the kid laugh, you know? Like, I'd want to punch that person too. And like, you just take that, and it's just citywide, this horrible mentality. And I feel like
a disdain for your fellow human beings.
And I feel like, and what I also like cinematically that he did with the lens and the camera is that he kept it pretty close on the streets. I mean, obviously, if you're from New York or you know cities, this is shot in the Bronx, Manhattan. Mm-hmm. But unlike other Batman movies where they do these wide takes where it's like, well, that's obviously Chicago, or that's obviously Pittsburgh, or that's obviously...
This was New York City.
This is like New York City, but like, I wasn't thinking, oh, that's so-and-so street. I was completely sucked into, this is Gotham City at this point in time, and I'm watching this guy deal with the bullshit that comes with living in Gotham City.
The only thing you could really recognize, unless you know every street of New York City by heart, were the steps in the Bronx when he's, climbing up and down.
Right. Which it's, we were joking around about this, no pun intended, about before you turn on the camera, is that like the Bronx supposedly is sick of it.
Yeah,
this has become now like the biggest tourist attraction, the biggest tourist draw for anybody wanting to come to New York. It's like, get the fuck out of the Bronx, all right? Get the fuck off these steps, fucking Joker. I got cosplay friends. I do cosplaying a little, and we want to do location shoots, not just Comic-Con shoots. We want to actually like go on locations, get some really good shots, warehouses and shit. And now everybody's like, Rocco, let's go up to the steps. I'm like, fuck you. I'm not looking to get robbed at 9, 10 o'clock at night on those steps. Get the hell out of here. Leave it alone. It was a great
Unless your dead shot's coming out really strapped.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it would be a dope shoot. But everybody's doing it.
Whoa, it looks so realistic. He's shooting them guys.
I'm so anti. Everyone's doing it. I'm like, come on, go find something new.
I completely agree with you.
But that whole thing, like, from when he kills... Okay, we do spoilers.
Yeah, we're doing spoilers.
So, when he kills his friend, his ex-coworker, and he lets the little guy go, which... I'm going to get into that theory in just a second. He fucking becomes full-blown Joker. He got the call. He's going on. He's heading to the show. And just the whole dance and that whole number was just fantastic, man. He really owned it. I read somewhere that... what's the condition that he suffers from? It's a pathological laughing disorder. Or
it's a real condition, but they never actually name it in the movie. At least I don't... If they did, it went over my head.
No, he has one of those cards. He goes, I have a condition.
But, I wanted to hear, a medical name to kind of ground it more in the science. Like, you're going for this
I'm kind of glad they didn't, though.
But it's real, though.
It is a real condition, absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, is that a guy who actually suffers from that in real life said that Joaquin Phoenix did his homework. So, that is exactly what it's like.
If they didn't name it, if they were making the shit up for the sake of the movie, then, don't name it. It's a comic book movie. I'm amenable to that. But the fact that it is real... I think you can go ahead and call it right out. Tell people, this is it.
And it also lends itself to the theory of, is this all in his head or not?
Right.
Where...
I want to get into that, but I want to spend some time on that. So we'll go to that later. You brought up the little person that he let go.
So he's out. There's obviously a little person actor that plays one of his coworkers. He's a clown for the company that he works for, and he gets fired from. So in that final scene where they end up at his house and I guess they're paying their...
The other guys tell him, I just want to know what you said to the cops.
Yeah, right, they're coming around.
They're saying it was my gun, even though it was.
Yeah, I mean, you're an asshole for giving Arthur a gun.
Right.
All right, you douchebag. But you're looking out for yourself. But at that point, I think he was full tilt, Arthur, so he knew what he was going to do. But the little guy, I think it was I wouldn't call it an Easter egg, but because I have such an appreciation for the Joker, and I'm a comic book collector, and I collect certain key issues. There's a key issue that I feel like people don't consider a key issue. Batman 186 from 1966.
Okay.
And his name was, his short name was Gaggy, but his real name was Gagsworth A. Gagsworthy. And he was technically the Joker's first, sidekick.
Huh.
Way before Harley Quinn.
I never knew about it.
And I'm like, he let him go. he likes him. He always says, "I always liked you, man."
And he gives him a little kiss on the forehead.
Yeah,
and
he
sends him on his
unlocks
way.
the fucking door.
That was I swear to God, I'm like, this guy's not going to be able to reach the lock.
So let's say, hypothetically, he does become the quintessential Joker we all know and love. What if he, like, recruits him at some point down the road and he becomes gags-worthy? Just to fuck with him. Just be like, oh, you work for me now. You owe me this.
There were parts of this movie... First of all, I felt the whole movie was entirely predictable. I knew exactly what was going to happen before it happened, but that said... It didn't ruin it for me. It didn't take me out of it. I still wanted to see the events transpire. I just knew that they were going to happen. And I don't know if it's because the movie was... It kind of kept things very simple, or maybe it's just because I know what the Joker's going to do.
Well, there's two elements. I think what you're alluding at is that there's two source material elements that they obviously went with, and that's... he was a struggling stand-up comic from The Killing Joke.
Right.
And also, when he goes on live television in Dark Knight Returns...
You knew damn well when he went on that TV show that he was going to blow up De Niro. He was definitely killing De Niro.
Some shit was going to happen.
You knew it from the fucking first trailer.
Oh my God, yes. The second... Oh, yeah, you knew it.
You knew he was going to kill the guy when he came and talking to him in his apartment before he let the little dude go.
Sure.
I did not expect him to kill his mom. I didn't. Even though, when it's...
Well, the whole mom is another part of the discussion, but we can get to that next. But, what I didn't expect is how he was going to... Don't forget, I think there's one element that I think everyone can agree on, and that's that Arthur Fleck has extreme delusions of grandeur.
Yes.
So, throughout the entire movie, he's fantasizing about how Robert De Niro's character, he looks up to him, and he has
thinks
these
of them
fantasies,
like a father figure.
right? He has these fantasies of being a famous stand-up comedian, being on television. So you have all these different interpretations that are going through his head, but you don't know how it's actually going to happen when the shit really happens.
Right.
So it was interesting, this kind of, and it was just so uneasy because he's doing these. Not that he became a little flamboyant, but there was something very coy that starts coming out of Arthur when he's on the TV show and he's getting interviewed and he's admitting to killing the three dudes, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is just like, when is it gonna happen? What's gonna happen? What's he gonna say next? And it's like coy is a great word to also describe a facet of the Joker, and he became very coy at that point. There was no method to his madness like in Heath Ledger's Joker, so I like that distinction. But this version of the Joker is just like a man unhinged, and he's so unpredictable and just like impulsive. And then going back to the mother, she
was nuts too, apparently.
So that's my theory, is that whether the final theory that you have by the end of the movie, and we'll discuss that in a bit, but throughout the movie, if you take what happens and what's depicted about his mother as fact, you got to be convinced that she's just nuts.
Yeah.
And then he's also adopted that from his mother.
Adopted. There you go. I mean, that was the whole concept of this movie, and the story that we heard was that Thomas Wayne was going to be the Joker's father, and that he was an evil, corrupt businessman. And
I didn't see that coming.
That he was...
That Thomas Wayne was
a dick? Or was
his father. I didn't see that sort of curveball with his mother. Like, he reads the notes and the letters and stuff like that. We had that information on Pete's Basement, probably within a month of the first trailer. Really? I was like, huh?
What we had heard was that Thomas Wayne was going to be this evil businessman who wanted to tear down the slums of Gotham and make Gotham great again. It was all supposed to be like a knock at Trump. And I don't give a shit where your political aspects land. It's definitely there. And I believe all of that was cut out. Because I just didn't think it resonated well with fans during the preview movies. And I understand that because I say keep your politics out of my funny book movies. I don't care. And plus it also kind of grounds the movie in today's society. And if you want it back in the 80s, you're going to lose that connection. So I think all of that was cut out. But there were parts of this movie that you can definitely see where that would have gone.
Well, yeah.
And I'm glad they left it
I
out.
agree with you that they probably had a lot more dialogue or insinuations that this is like a Trumpian sort
Plus,
of
the guy
thing.
playing Thomas Wayne does a lot of political movies. And if you add De Niro and his distaste into the mix, you have a lot of evidence that stacks up that says, yeah, it was, but it got cut.
So the other thing that I kind of agree with, and normally I don't, and I kind of roll my eyes at it, is a lot of the negative reviews and a lot of the uproar of this movie that it's and the effects that it's having socially and politically in our culture across the country is that I kind of agree that this is a kind of a bit of a controversial movie. It's abundantly obvious that there's this sort of anti-elitist mentality or theme going throughout the movie. That's the big jab there. Stick it to the 1%.
Sure.
You know, let's fight against ultra gentrification. So yeah, I can see where some people are getting a little heated about that. At the same time, though, I take Todd Phillips's stance on this. It's fiction.
It is.
It's make believe.
It might even be fiction in the movie itself.
Yeah, you're still dealing with fictional characters based on fictional characters.
characters.
It's
still one of the best.
But you know, it can't be denied that certain every great movie is always topical at that current time. And this just happens to fall within that. And if it works, it works. It's an element that fucking works.
Yeah.
All right? This movie kind of was just not hitting it over the head. Like you said, I feel like they pulled their punches after maybe 1 or 2 screen tests just to make it a little bit more accessible to a wider audience. But yeah, it's fucking there. It strengthens the quality of the movie in my mind. You know, it hits that fact home a lot more. And it drives a guy like this to take action, or if he always felt like he was an outcast, what would drive a man? What would be the final catalyst that drove a man to create these horrific acts? So
he had a bad day,
and don't forget, he had a bad day, and his first bad day was on the subway train,
right? Which
was heavily, if you know anything about history, is what was it, the vigilante in the 80s? The reason why free open carry is no longer legal in New York City is that there was a guy in the mid to late 80s. He had a carry permit. He had a revolver, and these three or four punks on the subway started taunting and harassing people, and they went to him, and they did have a screwdriver in their hand, like scaring and terrorizing people, and he just got up, pow, pow,
I did not know
pow, pow. Oh, it was a huge story.
Holy shit! I gotta look at that.
So that to me was heavily influenced. It heavily influenced that scene. Yeah, everything is always inspired by something else. Now, that's horrible. It's horrible. But it's also a fantasy within the... And this is where we get to the
Here
final...
it is. Good segue.
This is where we get to the final theory, is this just another fantasy inside this delusional fucking guy's head? Is he just playing out these scenarios in his head and validating his existence as the Joker? So... The final theory that I've come to the conclusion is that when in the final scene, when he's talking to the therapist, to the shrink, and she says, "What's so funny?" And
he just laughs. He's like,
and he says, "You wouldn't get it." Because literally everything we just saw for the last 2 hours
very well could be in his own head.
It's just another scenario that to him is a fucking joke. I killed through.
And there's evidence running around throughout the movie if you pick up on it. The first being that he's seeing Zazie Beetz next to him in all of these scenarios. She goes to see him at the comedy club.
Right.
She's with him when his mother's in the hospital. And she comforts him at some point. He walks in, gives her a big kiss on the mouth.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff. And then you finally realize that was all in his head. She was never there. They had maybe one conversation in the elevator.
The elevator. I think that was it.
That was probably real.
That's all for a guy like him he would need to trigger a fantasy.
Yep.
Like she did this
and
thing
I bet you he
she,
did follow her all around, seeing where she worked and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I think her approaching him about it...
That never happened. Well, they showed that. It's that was you? Oh, I thought that was you following me, being weird, but ha, that's great. And they show him at the door, and then all of a sudden she's not there anymore.
Just like he does with Robert De Niro's character.
Right.
When he fantasizes being on the show.
And that was one of the things I really liked when all of a sudden he's had just the fucking worst day ever. He finds out that his mom is kind of batshit crazy. Mm-hmm. She potentially lied about her involvement with Thomas Wayne.
Right.
He might not be his father. Arthur was in fact adopted by her. There are adoption papers that he manages to weasel away from the attendant at Arkham. and he looks through them. So everything that Thomas Wayne had told him
was true.
Yeah,
And
mom was crazy.
And also, in defense of everything I was saying, this depiction that Thomas Wayne is this douchebag, like ultra elitist Trumpian type
Could
asshole
also be
is just a validation for him to create this villain in his head.
To dislike him, yes.
He was I mean, because also, like, you're still creating a Batman universe type movie. You don't want your audience, who is majorly Batman fans, right, who love fucking Batman. We don't want to look at Thomas Wayne in a negative light.
Absolutely not.
But
there was a story that tried to do that, and it tanked.
Yes. Yeah, it would just make more sense for him to look at Thomas Wayne as this negative factor in his life that justifies and validates him creating terror and anarchy all over fucking Gotham City. So...
And, I mean, there's the idea also that how does he do the things that he does? How does he actually get through a police barricade to go and talk to Thomas Wayne in person, possibly one of the richest guys in Gotham City, and now you just confront him in the bathroom?
You know what scene that drove me crazy was at one point he was running from the cops, I think? Yeah, he was running from the two cops, and he gets stuck in that big crowd. Everyone's wearing Joker masks. And he ends up getting away from them, and he just struts away. And as he's strutting down the subway corridor, all these cops running past him. Like, there's no way cops wouldn't detain you.
Right.
You're one of them.
You're going
to get questioned.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing, is that, like, these are simplistic sort of visions.
But at the same time, that is unrealistic that happened. And that it all ties into the same concept, that this is all taking place in his head. What parts of it are real and what is not? And the biggest evidence that supports this, and I didn't pick up on this at first.
I saw it on the internet recently.
Yes, I did.
And it really did kind of like, because and you're gonna say it, and I'm gonna say from a filmmaker's perspective, it convinces me that this is a legit theory. But go ahead.
If you look behind Arthur at any point where they show a clock, the time is exactly the same. They make sure you see it when he's in both therapists' office.
Yes. Then there's intentional things that you as a filmmaker are throwing in there. Maybe it's just for continuity, but continuity is more based on a reality thing. But every single time that you see a clock on camera in frame, it's the same time. That means that's
intentional.
Alludes to this idea that everything's in his head and it's all happening in this therapy session. I have an additional theory to that, and that is, and this is a stretch. People are kind of questioning, like, his age in terms of, like, well, if Bruce Wayne is only, like, 10 years old and Arthur Fleck is,
it's
like,
clearly
40.
Like 30. I was going to say 35 at the youngest.
Oh, that seems a stretch. I would say 40. But what, 20 years later, like, Batman's battling a 6-year-old Joker? So my theory is that, don't forget, every single, like, this is Gotham City. Every scene, every piece of setting in this movie is dirty. It's run down. It's not clean. There's nothing really polished about any of these settings. Yet in the final scene in this movie, he's sitting in a shrink's office in Arkham Asylum, and he's, then it cuts to him walking down the hallway.
With the bloody footprints.
Blood. It's pure white. And I look at that as sort of, and this is just my theory and my interpretation, is that everything that this is now, Batman exists. Joker is currently in Arkham Asylum. It's now modern day Gotham City. Batman has cleaned up the streets, and the clean hallway, the clean corridor, the clean room is a symbolism for Gotham City being cleaned up after Batman comes on the scene. And the Joker is always going to be there to dirty everything up by
putting the footprints
in blood. He's always going to be back to, like.
See, everybody was looking at that scene like, oh, did he kill the guard? Did he kill the psychologist? Is that what that meant? That's way beyond anyone had ever thought. That's fantastic.
So I think that he's sitting in this office. He's playing this joke inside his head. She goes, "What's so funny?" He goes, "You wouldn't get it," because for the last 2 hours, he's been playing out this scenario about one of the many versions of his origin story. And there's your fucking origin story.
And I like the idea that in this one, he creates Batman, not him.
Yes.
The idea of him
What
creates Batman, and not the other way around.
Right. What better way? Because the whole thing about Joker and the Batman going hand in hand, and one can't live or exist without the other,
Right.
is that the ultimate fantasy is that the Joker is the reason and the catalyst and the cause for creating Batman. And, but he's the same age. Like, he's the Joker now. And he was the same Joker then. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the age. So, like, he's just taking who he is now, modern-day Gotham City, 40 years old, or however old he is, 45, and he's just putting that version of the Joker into 1980s Gotham City.
So it could very well tie into any Batman story you want.
And that also that's also what the clock Easter egg lends itself to, is that time is a huge portion of this. Time is still in this universe. As long as he's playing out these scenarios in his head, he is 45 when in the 80s becoming the Joker.
Could be whenever.
But
could be however old. It doesn't matter.
All I'm going to say is, as a Batman fan, I don't consider this movie an origin story by any means. And this is just a perfect sort of representation of how the inner consciousness works for the Joker. Mm-hmm. This is what's good. Do you ever see the movie The Cell?
With Jennifer
Lopez and Vincent D'Onofrio as like that serial killer. It's like going into his mind for a day, and this is the kind of scenarios that is playing out in his head. So that's the way I interpreted the movie, and you know
what's fun is I first saw the movie and I'm like, yeah, okay, it didn't blow me away, it was cool, but the more you sit and try to dissect it, and the more you look at different theories like that one with the the cleaned up Gotham, and is it all in his head? Because that's not something that registered with me at first. I thought it was, everything was moving forward, and now he went from not taking his medication, as he told the original therapist, because now they were cutting off his insurance or whatever, so she couldn't meet with him. He stopped taking his medication, and look at the anarchy that ensued, and now later on he gets caught by police and he's in Arkham again, and he kills this woman just on principle, on happenstance.
I also like the idea of, I feel like the riot at the end is also very sort of very much the
that's Arkham. Like the bells and whistles going off in his head.
It's also like cinematic, like visually it reminded me of the Arkham video games, where like parts of, like in every single one of those like Arkham City and Arkham Origins and Arkham Knight, where you're battling all these henchmen in Gotham City, on the streets of Gotham City. And it's just like, these are all these potential goons that look up to this guy causing all this anarchy and chaos. I feel like the scenario that he plays out in his head, where he goes on TV and shoots Murray in the head, like that probably happened.
Right.
It's just like that. That's why I'm in here again. I went on TV and I shot a fucking guy in the head. But it's just,
I don't look at it as if he was just a crazy guy that literally is fantasizing about all this. I think he's remembering bits and pieces of his life.
Yeah.
And he's rehashing it to this therapist and laughing his balls off about it.
Right. And there's no Arthur Fleck. You know what I'm saying?
It's a name.
There's a theory
it's
that
John Smith.
The other theory that a lot of people say is that, well, if this happens in the 80s and he instigates these riots in Gotham, and it drives a random goon to kill Martha and Thomas Wayne, thus creating Batman, and that he's not the Joker that Batman ends up facing, but somebody that
was inspired by him,
that influenced the Joker that would be. I don't
like that one.
I don't like that one.
I don't like that one. Like, I don't like Scott Snyder's abysmal "There Are Three Jokers" story.
Yeah, oh my god,
which never actually came to fruition. I think because he realized it sucks, and all the fans hated it.
Yeah, I just feel like this is just another sort of look into the psyche.
This is one of his multiple choice scenarios. The one thing I did like the best that I did pick up on, because I'm very bad at picking up on like cues unless they're fucking face smackingly obvious.
Right, yeah.
Was when he's actually in Zazie Beetz' apartment, and that's when you realize like she doesn't know this dude. It's like, your name is Arthur, right? You live down the hall, and he's like, I had a bad day, and I'm like, yes, they said it.
Yes.
I would have loved to hear Joaquin Phoenix take a little bit more of that the line,
sure,
you know, I don't know the acting term, but that dialogue,
Yeah.
just to hear him do it. But that said, I really appreciated the nod to the Killing Joke.
Absolutely.
So now I have to end this with a major question.
All right.
You can plead the fifth if you like.
Sure.
Was it better than Heath Ledger's Joker?
No.
I agree. It was not.
No. I think these are two totally different beasts. Because at the end of the day, you, just as the Joker would say, you can't have the Joker without Batman, and you can't have Batman without the Joker. They sort of just complement each other, and I just feel like seeing the Joker in his true traditional element was best depicted by Heath Ledger.
Okay.
I still actually Jack Nicholson's Joker is now my
Still phenomenal as well, of course.
if I don't like ranking shit, but if I was gonna rank it, it would go Heath is number one. I think Jack Nicholson still takes the number 2 spot, and Joaquin is a solid third. But yeah, it's just
I think we can just all agree nobody liked Leto.
he's not even on my list.
Yeah.
Who?
I am so sitting here like fingers and toes crossed that we just for a moment, even if it's just no makeup, I don't care, something in Arkham, that we see Mark Hamill as the Joker in Crisis on Infinite Earths. The CW storyline that's going on.
Dude, I've fallen off the CW. I can't keep up anymore. I know the.
I understand. Believe me, it's almost not worth keeping up with at this point in the season. But a lot of it, this series, this crossover, is going to be worth your time.
Oh, I'll check it out for sure.
Everybody's in it. So let us know what you thought of the Joker. I'm really eager to hear your opinions on this. Hit us up. questions@peachbasement.com, facebook.com/peachbasement, Instagram, Twitter, etc. @Pete's Basement. Make sure you go and follow my boy Rocco Nevers over here at Rocco on Instagram.
OHROCCO on Instagram. Sometimes I'll post some stuff on Twitter. I'm doing stand-up comedy now too, so what a perfect time to do stand-up.
What a perfect
It's
time.
funny, I saw Joker less than a week before I did my first stand-up. I did Type 5, and I didn't bomb, which I consider a success.
That's good.
But I'm just going, I could see why somebody would want to kill somebody. But no, I have no intention of going on TV and shooting anybody in the head.
That's good. That's important. And at this point, it's really an important add-on. You know
why? Because that only happens in fiction, fictional characters.
We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.
I gotta go back to work. Fuck. Let's go.
Pete's Basement is copyrighted 2019. Ripped Productions. All rights reserved. So go fuck yourself.